Good morning. I'm joined here with a cup of coffee and Beamer and Bruce and my Bible and the beginnings to what looks like a Sunday morning message. I hope that you're well. I look forward to sending an email out to you through the church this morning with a review of the judge's decision last week and a tentative forecast of what will happen this week. Good morning. Hello, Angelo, Angie, Hazel. Hello, Karen and Dave. And we're in Genesis 42 this morning. Make plans if you would to be with the folks at Rick's dad's house next Sunday night, our annual Memorial Day get together. We do it on the Sunday evening of Memorial Day weekend. The odd thing is, I think this is the first time out of 4 years where the Memorial Day weekend doesn't land on the fourth Sunday, or forgive me, the fifth Sunday, or we'll just say the last Sunday of May. It's Memorial Day Monday, which happens the last Monday of May, happens just after the fourth Sunday this year. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? So we are looking forward to that. Thanks to those of you who joined in last night's message. Had quite a few people in the sanctuary. Thank the Lord. And then we had lots of folks online as well. If our study last evening provoked any questions, I hope that you will ask them. Good crowd yesterday morning. It was really nice to see such a good, strong showing from God's people. And we look forward to more believers feeling as though they are safe to come and be a part of the assembly of the saints. And very, very important that we as believers, Paul would put it in these terms, strengthen the weak. So I don't think for even a second that we're dealing with weak people. I think that the principle tells us that we should encourage one another, that long before the government tells us it's safe to venture out to church, they have already told us it's safe to venture out to retail outlets of all kinds. So I think that it's feasible and reasonable that whatever risks a person will take on Monday, they should take on Sunday. Whatever risks they would take on Saturday, they should take on Sunday. I think that being faithful to the Lord and his body is of supreme importance. How do you know when you're following the Lord Jesus? Can you imagine telling someone that you're following Jesus and you are miles and miles and miles away from his body? It's really important that we get back to a level of regular meeting. And may God be praised as we do it. We have just 2 weeks left of this, Genesis 42, and it is a chapter filled with drama. And so what I plan on doing is reading the whole chapter, and I plan on making very few comments, and I hope that you will type in your questions or your comments so that I can follow through with my plan here for once to read the entire chapter. Here we go. Genesis 42. When Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to the place and buy for us there, that we may live and not die." So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, "Lest some calamity befall him." And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. And he said to them, "Where'd you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food. Dad sent us down here and here." So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them and said to them, "You are spies, and you have come to see the nakedness of the land." Hear this again. Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them. And they said, "No, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies." But he said to them, "No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And in fact, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more. He's dead." But Joseph said to them, "It is as I spoke to you, saying, you are spies. In this manner you'll be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not leave this place until your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother, and you will be kept in prison, that your words may be tested to see whether there's any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." So he put them all together in prison 3 days. And Joseph said to them the third day, "Do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house, but you go and carry grain for the famine of your houses, and bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you will not die." And they did so. And they said to one another, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore this distress has come upon us." And Reuben answered them, saying, "Did I not speak to you, saying, do not sin against the boy? And you would not listen. Therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us." But they did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. And he turned himself away from them and wept. Then he returned to them again and talked with them, and he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain, to restore every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. Thus he did for them. So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed from there. But as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed at the encampment, he saw his money, and there it was, in the mouth of his sack. So he said to his brothers, "My money has been restored, and there it is in my sack." Then their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, "What is this that God has done to us?" And they went to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan, and told him all that had happened to them, saying, "The man who is Lord of the land spoke roughly to us and took us for the spies of the country. But we said to him, we're honest men, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is more, the youngest is with our father in this day in the land of Canaan." Then the man, the Lord of the country, said to us, "By this I will know that you're honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me. Take food for the famine of your households and be gone. And bring your youngest brother to me, so that I will know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men. I will grant your brothers to you, and your brother to you, and you may trade in the land." Then it happened as they emptied their sacks that surprisingly, each man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, "You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and you want to take Benjamin. All these things are against me." Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, kill my 2 sons, if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead. He is left alone. If any calamity should befall him all along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave." And that's how the chapter ends. 38 verses. What stuck out to you? Good morning, nice. Leslie, Lisa. What stuck out to you? What should stick out to you is that there are a few little nuances of truth that take place. Most of these I was reminded of in reviewing the commentary that I wrote from 91 lessons through the book of Genesis that I taught in Sunday school, which are most of them still available on sermon audio at my previous church. I had the duty primarily of pastoring a portion of a church, and we started the portion that I pastored started with my Sunday school class. I had a Sunday school class Nikki and I led with about 120 adults in it. And so we taught through Genesis and took a while. But anyway, these notes are available in my commentary, and I reviewed them this morning, and I found them to be very helpful. I'd like to see if I can bring some of them back from my memory. First, you might notice that they're arguing in front of Joseph about who's at fault. And Reuben, the oldest of Leah and Jacob, and the oldest of Jacob, said, I told you guys not to do this. Remember that? And Joseph was there listening, but they didn't know he was listening. They thought he was a dumb Egyptian who couldn't understand the Canaanite language, or the Hebrew language probably. So if you understand that, then you understand that Joseph heard them and basically heard his oldest brother clearing himself. And I'm not talking about drinking a colon cleanser. I'm talking about how he's told them, look, I had nothing to do with this, and you boys should have listened to me. So then why does Joseph keep Simeon back? Because that's what happened. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll keep y'all here and send one of you back. Go get your youngest brother, and then I'll know you're not lying. I'll let you go. And then Joseph acquiesces, good word, and he allows all of them to go back except one. And who does he keep? He keeps the one who turns out to be responsible for his being sold into slavery. Simeon is the second oldest. Reuben, it says, came back after they had sold Joseph. It says in Genesis 37, Reuben wasn't there. And here he confirms it. Well, now Joseph knows what Reuben and everyone else knows, that Reuben wasn't the one who led the brothers to sell him. Who was it? The second oldest, Simeon. Now, I don't want to paint a picture for you that Reuben, the oldest brother, was a saint. I mean, he might be a saint, but I mean a saint in the other sense. Yesterday, I used forgiveness and repentance and someone asking for forgiveness as a prerequisite for you to forgive them in my sermon last evening in our worship service. And we already got an email, right? So when I say in a sense, I mean that in a sense, there's forgiveness. Yes, it's true. In a sense here, Reuben is not a saint. What do I mean by that? Well, Reuben, we're told in Genesis 35, ended up spending a night in bed with one of his dad's wives. Or if we could say it this way, Reuben went to bed with one of his stepmothers. Okay. So Reuben is not clear of much, but in this issue, he's clear. What's the lesson? Well, one of the lessons could be that you don't need to let failures in one area of your life dictate that you're just a total loser. You can rebound. You can be a person who makes good choices, even if you've made terrible ones. You don't need to let it become a part of who you are. Move on from it. Make sure that you have forgiveness before God. Try to seek restoration with others in a reasonable fashion, and then move on from there. God help us to do that. God help us to have a good balance and to allow God to use us in some special way. Okay, what else can we get from this chapter? Well, we can get a good taste of sarcasm. In verse number 1, Jacob says to his boys, now remember, Jacob is over 100 years old, and his boys are about 30 at the very least. Just do the math with me. They're at least 30. They're probably close to 40 because Joseph is the second youngest, and he is just over 30. We'll see that in a moment, probably next chapter. But Joseph is roughly 32 years old, maybe a little younger than that at this point. Well, that means that his oldest brother is probably 7 years older than him. So Reuben is probably pushing 40, and Reuben and the other brothers are now back, and they're in their 30s, and they're older than Joseph. And Jacob is talking to them after a season. They've returned. and they returned after. Forgive me. Okay, I don't want to get my chapters mixed up. It's beginning of chapter 42. They haven't been to Egypt yet, and Jacob says to his sons, "What are y'all standing here looking around for? I've heard there's food in Egypt, and here you sit like a bunch of idiots." Now, how did Jacob hear that there was food in Egypt? How did he do that? How did Jacob know there was food in Egypt? Do you have any good clues from the book from the book of Genesis? My blessed wife did not set up her birthday present. I don't know how to operate that thing over there. So I had to settle for a Keurig. It's okay. Jacob sent his mother this state-of-the-art thingamabobby that grinds your beans and paints your toenails and pours your coffee. That's an idea, Judith. That's an idea. Perhaps perhaps they learned something through the dreams of Joseph, but here's Jacob. He hasn't seen Joseph in 20 years. Well, 13 years. What am I thinking? Y'all should be correcting me on this. They've already been through the years of plenty. They've already been through the years of plenty. That means that Joseph is no less than 37 years old because he's 30 when he stands in front of Pharaoh. Well, I'm glad I caught this. Nearly 20 of you would have left here thinking that either Bill Sturm's an idiot or you would have thought that Joseph was almost 30. Joseph was 30 when he stood before Pharaoh. Then 7 years of plenty. So Joseph is 37. And now his brothers have experienced so much famine, and his dad has experienced so much famine that they're now being sent south to Egypt. Okay. All right. So now Joseph, we know, is 37. We know his brothers are in their mid 40s, at least Reuben is. So that's the funny part about verse 1 is that Jacob is saying, what are y'all standing around looking at each other for? And now they have children. Okay. Imagine being old enough being fussed at by your father, and you're old enough to have kids, and your dad is still fussing at you. It's hilarious. I may know what that's like. So anyway, how did Jacob know that there was food in Egypt? Perhaps dreams. But probably he heard talk by the way that people here talk about it. Remember Ruth? Ruth said that she heard there was food back in Bethlehem. Okay, so people talk. Now, why do they talk? What is the thing that God uses to spread news back before the printing press or whatever? One of them is business. And don't forget, it was business or tradesmen or the free market. Ironically, the trading slaves on the free market. Hilarious. But remember chapter 37, you had traveling tradesmen, and they were going from where to where? Well, somewhere north to Egypt. It's not out of the realm of possibility that these same traders or people on the same trade route are coming through town and saying, hey, there's plenty of food in Egypt, and they're carrying food probably northward. And so Jacob is thinking, well, if we can buy food from tradesmen, we could probably go get our food a little cheaper. Yeah. Hazel, I'm willing to bet, since that's in quotes, that you took that from the commentary. That's pretty funny. That's good. Hello, Mary Matthews on YouTube. It's good to see you. I hope that you're feeling a little better. I hope that Joe is doing well and that his heart feels kind of okay after the surgery in February. I cannot wait until I can see Joe and Mary back with us in worship. I would love to drop in and say hello to you if you're okay with it. Make sure you tell me. I don't want to do that if it'd make you feel uncomfortable. Okay, good. What else can we share here? Don't you think it's interesting that Jacob here, rather Joseph, by the time the boys get down to Egypt, Joseph wants to see his brothers and his dad. There's this real kinship that full siblings apparently have that half siblings do not. But I don't think that's the answer here, because I've observed in our own church that half siblings can be very close. So I don't think that's the issue here, and even step siblings. But what I do think is the issue here is that his other brothers, which are half brothers, yeah, were that's right, Judith. We're so terrible to him that the only one he could really count on was his brother Benjamin, who, by the way, was his youngest brother. And don't forget, Joseph knows that mom died giving birth to his little brother. The bond that Jacob had with Joseph and Benjamin must have been very sweet. Joseph was already dad's favorite, and then he has a little brother, and it takes mom's life. There's so many great things that can come from just sitting back and thinking about that beautiful relationship. Jay, hello from the YouTube feed. My name is Josh. I'm just going to sit in and listen. Feel free. Feeling a little lost. My grandmother died last night. Sorry to interrupt. Jay, you haven't interrupted one bit. Thanks for stopping in. My grandmother died about 6 years ago, and I did her funeral in Inglewood, Florida. It's tough to lose a grandma. I've been thinking about her a long time, several times since then, and can't wait to see her again. Jay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch my phone number into the YouTube feed so that you have it, and you give me a call a little later, okay? And if you don't want to, that's fine too. I'll give you your space. But there you are. Feel free to call me a little later, all right? Welcome to our little family here. So I don't know if you mean that you feel a little lost in this world because of what's going on with your family, or if you feel a little lost in our Bible study, but in both cases, hang out for a while with us. All right, so that's good to meet you. I think I shared with you why Simeon was chosen. Let's see here. What else? Okay, I think you might notice a little change here in his brothers. His brothers are acting like stooges. They haven't really acknowledged God's will in their life at all. I mean, why didn't they think that God was behind their brothers' dreams 20 years ago? Here, all of a sudden, you have two things happening. You have in verse number, well, early in the chapter, I would just think it's just a beautiful, beautiful phrase where it says, Joseph remembered his dreams. Oh boy, 20 years have passed. And Joseph has seen what God will do in his life. But life has gotten very, very scary for Joseph. Life has gotten uncertain for Joseph. And life has even taken a turn. I mean, think about it. You're Joseph, you're number 2 in the known world, and you started out being a punk kid that your brothers sold literally into slavery. You're probably wondering if your dreams were real, if they were your doing. You might be wondering, how is this going to happen? And your brothers show up and they aren't bowing down yet. Or how does the phrase go? Yeah, forgive me. They did in verse number 6. They bowed down with their faces to the earth, just like it says in their dreams. So this is interesting. I wonder if Joseph quit looking for his brothers to fulfill his dreams or for God to fulfill his dreams. And then as it's happening, Joseph remembers his dreams. So whatever disappointments you have going on in your life, it's important to know that while you may have forgotten your dreams that God put in your heart, he has not forgotten. And it will be so obvious that God is batting for your lineup that after a while, in verse 28, his brothers know that God is behind this terrible calamity. His brothers don't know Joseph's behind it, but they know finally that God is involved in their lives. This is the wrong kind of involvement from God. You don't want this kind of involvement. You don't want to go from doubting that God has favor in your life directly to doubting or You don't want to go from doubting God's favor in your life to definitely believing in his anger in your life. Here, the boys say in verse 28, this is what God has done to us. Can you imagine that the first real thought you have about God is that he is against you? Terrifying. So while you are where you are, know that God is all loving, all wise, and that is how he manages his love, is because he's wise. He knows the right thing. He knows what kind of hand to put in our life. He is all powerful, all present. He is he's all knowing, but he's all wise. And that is what makes the difference. That is how we go from he's out there and he doesn't care to he's in here and he actually gives a rip from me. This is a really powerful chapter. And they get back in verse 37 and 38. And I hope you can see it in your mind's eye. They pull off at the wayside, and not just one of them has money, but now they all have the money they took to Egypt in their bags. This is not some kind of everyone piles out at the 7-Eleven at a rest stop, or they all pile out to use the John, and they got to wait in line, and they start digging through their duffel bags and realizing that whatever they spent at Chinatown, they not only have those knockoff Oakleys, but they also have the money they paid for them. This is not that. This is far more serious. Their cars, in today's lingo, are loaded down with groceries that they paid for, and they also have the money they spent to get them. They're terrified that if they return now to Egypt, they will all be arrested and thrown in the brig for thievery against Pharaoh. Well, I've enjoyed it. I hope you have. We'll pick up, God willing, with chapter 43. Make plans tentatively to get an email tomorrow evening or Wednesday morning about our plans for Wednesday, Sunday morning, Sunday night. Be also looking for tentative gathering Wednesday night. According to the latest judge's ruling regarding our governor, we are not held to any kind of numerical limitation. We are held to safe practices of social distancing. So be on the lookout for that. And we thank God that we had no one in the entryway last night. No one in the side halls. It almost felt like the old days. The only thing that might have been missing was you. So may God grant you sweet rest and peace, and the Church of God at Sandy Ridge Baptist with continued growth and flourishing. May he grant you today productivity and efficiency in the work that he's given you to do, in the garden that he has given you to guard. May at the end of this day, you look back and say, I've wasted no time. I have wasted no prayers. I have spent my day in a manner in which if it were a letter, I could sign it to the Lord Jesus. Much love to you. Goodbye.